caramel, which I have, it goes from clear to overdone. If when it gets to that point, it'll go from clear to overdone in 2 seconds. And you got to really start, you got to really keep your eye on it when it starts just when it starts to turn. And from what I understand, honey is very much the same thing, being that it's mostly sugar, I guess, right?
Yeah, and it's weirdly cyclical as well, because so we brewed a beer on Sunday, and we ended up with some second runnings. So it was a big imperial stout. So I had the second runnings, and it was very chocolatey, and I'm like, oh, this is interesting. So so let's put that in the second pot, and let's put a bunch of honey in there, and it's going to be mostly honey, so let's boil it for a while, and it'll be sort of caramelized, although there's enough
liquid
wort in there that it wasn't, especially caramelizing it. But even that, with the large complement of sugar to it, it's weird cycles. Like it'll boil vigorously for a little while, grow quite a bit, and then it'll just fall down on itself, and it'll sit there for a few minutes and do nothing. And you don't notice anything about it, and then all of a sudden it'll foam again. Huh. So, I know I've made a little bit of candy in the past, and I know I've witnessed that same thing before, and I'm sure I must have looked up at the time why that occurs. But it is something about the fact that it's you've got that much sugar in it, and the way sugar works with heat differently, than other things that you can liquefy with heat. But yeah, you do have to watch it. And if you ever, anybody who's looking to make a bochet, if you ever read a recipe for it and it clearly states, make sure your pot is X times larger than the volume of the honey that you're looking to boil.
Listen to them.
Do not think, oh, that doesn't matter. That's just somebody being paranoid.
No, they're not. They're not, yeah. In fact, if anything, they usually underestimate, and then you get screwed anyway.
Because the problem is...
Dude, you said a 3-gallon pot. What the hell?
Right. Because once it goes over the edge and it's no longer hot, guess what happens to it? It turns into sticky stuff that you probably, even hot water won't necessarily get it off, depending on how hot it was when it went over the side. I've also had that really awesome experience too of it jumping out of the pot and hitting you on the bare skin.
Oh yeah, that's not fun.
Ouchie.
That's gotta be fun. Yep. Napalm.
Yep, that'll leave a mark.
Yeah.
So that only happened the one time.
Is it like sugar?
I have one candy recipe that the notation beside it is wear a damn face mask.
Is it like sugar also in the way that you shouldn't stir it until it gets to a certain boiling point? Or there's no danger of it crystallizing?
I'm going to claim stupidity and ignorance on that because I stir the crap out of it because I don't really want it to go crazy. Stirring to some degree helps it not aggressively foam. And again, I feel like the other thing that the foaming you have a problem with too is it's climbing up the edge of the pot, and as it starts to cool down, it's coating the edge of the pot. You're losing the honey. It's getting stuck to it.
Well, that's the candy part. That's where you get to harden that, and it's save that, and that's what you eat while you wait for the meat.
So, yeah, I'll stir it. I've got a big stainless mash paddle that I use for my beer brewing. So I'll gently, stir in there as it gets up to boiling, and then, pretty much just be fairly aggressive and stir it. I in my head, I'm thinking I'm making sure that I'm circulating the honey very well so that it's heating evenly. It's caramelized relatively evenly, because if you don't, I bet you can burn the bottom of it pretty quickly.
Okay.
So.
I have found that yes, when you're doing beer with malt extract, but no with honey so far.
Interesting.
Now, I haven't done bocets, but I've made honey candy a couple of times, and yeah, I've not found. And when I make wine, I mix I dump the sugar in my stock pot and then put water on top of it and bring that to a boil to get the sugar to dissolve. And I don't stir it, and I've never had the sugar burn either. And that's just the little thin Canadian Tire special stock pot.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I sort of just being paranoid and making sure that I don't get it to stick, and so the process for anybody who hasn't done this yet, who wants to kind of think about the whole thing, is decent sized pot, put it on the heat. So as a home brewer, I'm brewing out in the driveway, so I've got a propane burner with my stock pot on it. Get the heat going, get the honey rolling, stir it fairly frequently. and then stopwatch your time. And like I've said, 12 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, all of those, if you got it rolling pretty good, you'll notice the color change. The foam on the top will certainly change quite a bit. And, again, go to taste most certainly, but if you haven't done it before, take some restraint to at least learn the first time. So one of those checkpoints up to 20 minutes or so would be pretty reliable. Once you get to that point, then I usually will take it off the heat. I'll turn the heat off, let the foam settle down, and then I'll usually add about a gallon of water. And there's the trick too. If anybody's ever made candy before, be careful about adding the water because it will definitely foam a lot. And that's where, again, you've got the napalm because it will foam a lot and it's going to jump around quite a bit. So slowly add the water while you're mixing and then bring it back to a boil and let it boil there for like 5 or 10 minutes, to get everything mixed up. And at that point, you've re-liquefied the bochet honey so that you're sure that it's not going to get stuck. And now you've got this liquid where you can take it off the heat, let it cool. As soon as it cools down enough, you can put it in your fermenting vessel, add the remainder of your honey, add the rest of your water, any other ingredients, bring it up to your volume and gravity that you're looking to do, and then your normal nutrition and fermentation regimen from there. And that's pretty much what I've done. And, of the 6 or 7 that I've made, only one has been a dud because I thought I burnt the honey. The others have all been more unique than anything else I've made with the same honey. And that's what I'm digging about it, is it does something special to the honey. It's not just plainly caramelizing it. It's more to it than that. And I don't know what it is. I couldn't tell you. I'm not a chemist. I got no idea. But it's wonderful. It's almost like you're fermenting something different. It's a different starting product altogether in some cases.
Have you ever tried blending different amounts of regular honey along with your cooked honey?
Like I said, largely kind of 70-30%. I haven't necessarily done 2 different kinds of honey. I think one of the ones I made recently, I used up 1 bucket of wildflower honey and then finished the recipe with a couple of pounds of another one. They were probably somewhat similar, and they weren't varietal honeys that were uniquely different. But again, there's certainly a very interesting opportunity there because, some people like meadow foam honey for the marshmallow and cooked sugar aromas that has. I bet you could probably create something meadow foam-ish with a fraction of caramelized honey in another, nice floral honey. So you certainly could combine some things to create something that was more than the sum of its parts.
And given the price of meadow foam these days, and the fact that apparently, because you'll find this out when you listen to last week's show, because the big mead makers have twigged to the whole, oh my God, I love meadow foam thing, for the longest time. Yeah. I mean, back in the day, not long after I started Got Mead, so 16, 17 years ago, we stumbled over meadow foam, and it was this big secret. We wouldn't talk about it on the forum. We didn't say anything to anybody about it, because it was ours. We didn't want anybody to know, And there was a very select group of people that we sort of let into the meadow foam conspiracy. But then, it got popular and word got out, and pretty soon everybody was buying it. And now the big guys are buying it by the truckload, and the stock is getting bought up. And I mean, you can hardly get the stuff for love or money anymore. So yeah, if you can figure out a way to fake a meadow foam, that's going to be big shit.
Yeah, and I need to get another small batch of it. And like I said, I need to kind of manage my fermentation protocol a little bit better to kind of get that sort of saleable, balanced products, maybe say 3 months out from when I started. And then I think I'd be able to sit there and compare it to any of the bocets that we've not otherwise added anything else to and say, okay, what is it most like? And then go back and look at that recipe. What honey did I use? How long did we caramelize it? Because there's got to be a loose approximation there, I would imagine, because the caramelized honey has a lot of that same character to it as you find in a good quality meadow foam. So it's certainly a sound idea for folks that either can't get meadow foam or just kind of look at it out of my price range, because even when I bought it before, I cringe when I'm clicking the button to order it, 'cause I'm like, holy crap, this is really expensive with shipping. But if you know what you're doing with it, it definitely makes a killer mead. So, but I think I'll probably spend some more time with Bochet's, doing different things. We've got a 5-gallon batch of a Bochet right now that we're going to split into 5 1-gallon batches, and we've got a bunch of flavorings that we got from a company named Amaretti. They were at the National Homebrewers Conference this year, and they sent me and one of the guys in my homebrew club like a full kit of flavors. We've got tiramisu and hazelnut praline and some other stuff. So we're going to make a bunch of like sweet, like riff on dessert Bochet's out of this and see what works. I think one of them's Irish cream coffee. I mean, it is probably going to be awesome, because this is going to so complimentary to the caramelized honey. So this was my wife's idea. She's been digging the Bochet's as well, and she's looking at all these flavors. She's like, well, we can make Bochet's out of these. I'm like, you certainly could. You could actually make 5 Bochet's out of those if you wanted. And, so we've got to rack that down into the 5 1-gallon jugs and add the flavorings. But I bet you one of those is just going to be killer. And it's going to be one of those things like, okay, where do we get this flavoring, or how do we recreate this? Because this is something people are going to want. So it's, as I said earlier, it's another dimension to that kind of open palate that honey offers. Is once you caramelize it a little bit, it's new, it's different. It gives you a whole bunch of new possibilities. So I'm glad to see folks trying it. And more people trying it. I'm hoping more commercial versions of it come out so that we can see what the commercial guys are doing with it. I think it is a bit prohibitive, because, like I said, if I was going to do a 50-gallon batch of a dessert-style Bochet, I'd have to caramelize 117 pounds of honey. I'd essentially have to caramelize six batches of honey if I was going to use my 15-gallon kettle. But if I'm only doing it 20 minutes at a clip, it's only going to take me 2 hours to caramelize the honey I need for a 50-gallon batch. It's not, I mean, would I do it twice a month? Probably not. Would I do it a few times a year? If I can get a premium price for it for the extra labor, hell yeah, I would. Right? So, I mean, I think about maybe it won't be doable in a 7-barrel batch, because now you're talking about 4 times as much, and now you're talking about spending a whole day caramelizing honey, or getting a much bigger
setup.
Yeah, and maybe it isn't cost effective at that point, but I'm going to be a relatively small batch operation to start. So for me, there might be a niche to start with it, and it might be one of those things where eventually I'm only making it once or twice a year. I'm making the largest batch I can possibly make, because of the labor involved in it. And, maybe it's one of those special things that ends up selling out, every time we do it, just because it is relatively rare.
Yeah.
So.
Well, interesting to see if you could get a continuous feed thing for it or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's an interesting idea. I mean, and again, I guess if you think about it, there's been plenty of advances in fermentation over the last, 20, 30 years in the way that craft brewing has come along. You think about things like, the Randall from Dogfish Head, and doing freshly, hop infusions and stuff like that. If Bochet really ends up being a huge market fad, somebody will figure out how to caramelize honey in large enough batches that it will be effective to do. Somebody would figure it out, because you'd be leaving money on the table if you couldn't. So I just don't think it's something that's caught people's attention just yet. I mean, home brewers, we don't need anybody to commercialize it for us. We can do it anytime we want. But, now that I'm thinking about not being a home brewer anymore, I'm like, hey, wait a minute, I need somebody to make my Bochet for me. Now, wait a minute, that's going to have to be me. So, it'll be something that we'll do, because I think it'll be a fun differentiator. I know Sap House has done one, at least a couple years back. I think they actually just released a a fraction of that batch recently. So I know that folks have done it, but it's probably just the whole idea that nobody wants to sit around and